I'd like to start by showing you some examples of completed works from my friend Willy Wong. So we've got a basic, simple picture here, large shapes to begin. We're not going to add leaves today because we've only got the hour, but we can make a pretty nice looking rock bed that you can put in a little frame. So this is one example. This is another one. More leaves are happening in this one, but you might notice that most of these have a lighter area coming from the upper left direction. The first one also had this right there, right there, right there. The markings on the rocks are created with salt, with the crayon, and just with leaving white spots on the paper. So these are a couple of different ways we can do this. Again, we're just looking at the rocks today. We're not adding more things to it. We don't have enough time. And this one is more of a winter scene with some snow on it, and that's a whole other day. But again, this is a salt effect. This is with a pencil drag. Over here, a little bit more salt. Again, you can see the light coming from this direction, so light spot here on the upper left area of each piece. Now, first thing we need to do, we won't be tracing, we're going to draw this. This is an in-progress example. So you can see what we've done here is made large, almost like islands on the paper. Very small gaps in between. Big rocks are good because you can work in this space and let the paint flow into itself to get a really cool effect. And you can change colors and make the rocks all kinds of different things. When you're drawing out your rocks and placing them, I've got one that I did right here. That's really hard to see. I know it's very, very light and faded. In this example, the pencil that was used, when I was talking about pencils like hardness and softness, this would have been done with 6B pencil. So that's why you can see the strokes really well. This one that I did was done with a 2H pencil, which is much harder, it's a harder pencil. It's also harder to see. And this is better as far as with painting because you don't see the pencil when your picture is done. In this one, you have to be a little more mindful of where the pencil markings are so that you're going right up to the edge and you can make that stuff disappear. So I prefer to use a lighter pencil. If you don't have one, it will still work. So again, when you're drawing your picture for your setup, here's a fresh piece. Here's my pencil. And don't focus too much on making strange shapes. Just go with blobs. There's one island. There's another one. This one's going off the page. Here's a smaller one. Maybe it's shaped like a hot dog. Another one over here. And so on and so forth until you have filled up all of the space. You can leave some white areas in, that's fine. Sometimes they can touch, sometimes there's a little gap in between. Just think about a dry riverbed, that's what we're going for here. Fill this in, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to go back to this drawing that I have ready to go. I'll get my paints and show you how to start. All right, I'm back with the paint setup. Here is my basic paint set. It's a Yarka set. I will put all of these things in the description of the session. This is just the lid. You can use it as a palette to mix your colors together. I like this blue paper towel that you can get in the hardware store. It's just really absorbent, and I almost never throw it away. Like, you can see how messy it is. I've got a bunch of pieces of it here. This is one that I started as an example for you guys to see. It's in the middle of drying right now, so I've got my salt effect, I've got my different colors, greens, reds, blues, purples, a little bit of brown and black in there as well. I haven't touched in between yet. I'm leaving that for the grand finale, I suppose. I got my salt. You can see that my rocks have some nice bright spots in the upper left, and let's get started with our first color. I used this earlier today, And I have to grab my water cup. Sorry about that. I've got a cup with fairly clean water in it. If your colors are getting too murky, just change it out. Change it frequently. You're good to go. Remember, the light is coming from this direction, so I have two brushes. One, this is a number 8 Verona brush. Both of them are the same. I got them at Delta Art and Drafting Supplies in Edmonton. These are synthetic brushes. They're round and they have a nice pointed tip. All of the things that make it really nice to paint with. One of them, this clean-ish one, is designated for water. This brush is designated for paint. It's already got some muddy color on it from earlier, so I'll just add some more. Dip in here a little bit, and let's start with maybe this big rock right here. So on the light side, I'm going to put water, and then I'm going to take my muddy brush and just paint right up to the pencil edge. Kind of dab it in a little bit. So I've still got my nice light area on the upper left, and around we go. Just like that. A little bit faded. So, and I don't know, let's add some red in there just for interest. Notice how the paint is still wet. I can add more into it. Doesn't matter where. Remember, these are rocks, guys. There's no special way to do them. Now, while it's still wet and everything's blending together, sprinkle some salt on it and just let it do its thing. Now it's time to change to a different color. I'm not going to wash this brush. I'm going to get it wet again, and I use kind of a reddish brown. Let's go to the opposite side of the color wheel and let's go green. So I'm going to load my brush up with green, slop it into my paint tray lid, mix it in with some of this other murky mess, and now I'm going to pick another rock to do. So don't ever paint directly beside a wet one. You got to leave that until it dries. So I'm going to go maybe over to this great big one right here. Take my water brush, wet spot here, and my greenish color all the way to the edge. I'm dipping it into the pool of light in the middle, in the upper left corner. And I need some more. It's kind of boring, so I'm going to add some other color in there. But rocks aren't especially interesting. So that's the second rock. It's all right. I can push the paint around like so. I can add something else to it, maybe some orange, just give it a little bit of pizzazz right there. And again, I can put salt on this one too if I want to. Sprinkle it around, let the salt do its thing. And then let's go to a smaller rock for the next one. So I'm going to take this, it's just a regular Crayola crayon. I'm going to try to create a wax resist that shows up. So make some kind of lines or sediments in these rocks. You got to press really hard though. Earlier they weren't showing up very well. So we'll see how this works. Don't go into the area between the rocks because you don't want the sediments to go there. I tried this on this painting a little bit right there, but it's really hard to see, so there might be a better way to do this. I'm just experimenting to see how it goes. Let's add some burgundy in here and mix it up. And again, don't be afraid to play with the colors, just see what you get. Water always goes on first. You can see my water brush was a little bit dirty. And around all the way to the edges. This is why the pointy tip of the brush is nice. One of the hog's hair brushes that the little kids use, you could do it with that, but it's going to be more difficult. So I don't really know if my wax resist happened in this rock at all, but we'll just leave it. I'm not going to put salt on this one change it up a little bit. Sort of some white patches happening, which makes it a little more interesting. Now, let's change colors again. I didn't wash this out completely. Let's go blue. Slop up some blue, mix it in with the green. I don't want it to be a very intense blue because I don't think I've ever seen a blue rock, but we can do that. Now we've got a nice murky color. Again, remember, don't go directly beside any of these. Let's go for this one right here. So wet. And my water brush is actually a little bit murky right now. That's fine. This is quite blue, a lot more blue than I expected. You can work with it. You can leave sky holes on the paper, like right there, just little dry spots. Creates interest. Like that. Now I could add some black, let's say. Darken this one right up. And look, I broke my own rule. That's what happens when you paint beside a wet rock or anything in a watercolor painting. It didn't go too badly. That'll be fine. We can recover. It's not a tragedy. On this rock as well, we could try something different. We can make some scratch lines in it. Just with my pencil tip. They're not going to be perfect, and I have to do this while the paint is very wet. You can't go back and do this afterward. I did go a little bit over the edge right there, but that's okay. I wish I had better light. So we'll leave those ones for now. Let's see what happens next. And we'll carry on. I'll do a few more rocks, so I'll let you guys play with that. I'll talk to you in a few minutes. Now these rocks are quite dark. I did another one down here. I think I'm going to try a little bit of yellow. This color in my palette, it's not a really nice yellow, but if we add it with bright yellow and then mix it in with some of this murky business, we get something. So let's try it. I'll put it on a little white one here so it's not touching or side by side with any of these previous rocks. Scoop it around. And even that, it's more brownish green than yellow, but it's a little bit different. I think because I've got kind of red, green and orange, blue, reddish, purplish, maybe another yellow one over here, and I'll rinse this out. Also rinse out my water brush. I could change my water right now, but I'm not going to leave you guys. Using my dirty yellow palette over here, I'm not going to mix it in with this. I am going to go full yellow and see what we can do with it. Like this. Now, I've never seen a yellow rock before, so that just looks silly, but that's why we have all these other things. We can add, because it's still wet. So watercolor painting kind of is fast and furious. If it is still wet, you can always add more to it. Now, I've saved some of the bright yellow, but I've also darkened it up so it's more realistic looking. I'm going to use my water brush to pull some of the paint away and make that highlight spot on the upper left side like that. And I think we can leave it alone for now. I can do, once this is dry, we can put another layer on top and change it up a little bit. So, and what you do is you just go from rock to rock to rock and fill up all of your space. I'll let you guys play with that for a little while. We'll be right back. Now I'm going to work with the one where I finished the rocks already, so they're good to go. And you guys can pause and rewind this video and email me if you have any questions. I can help you with it. But doing these rocks is basic watercolor techniques that you can use for leaves, flowers, animals, and scenes, all kinds of stuff like that. It's the we're doing a wet on wet technique. That's where we put the wet water onto the paper first, and we add paint and mix the two so that they flow together. Now, the next thing we want to do is make the muddy riverbed in between everything. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. If your brush is nice and sharp, this will go very well because you've got lots of crevices and things in between. I am going to just take a risk and mix all this together. I want a nice dark mucky mud color, and what you'll find, especially with elementary kids, they mix all their colors together and you end up with this, and that's fine. This is very good for a riverbed. Maybe a bit of brown added to it, warm it up a little. You can add whatever you want to it, and keep in mind the color of the riverbed isn't going to be consistent everywhere, so you can add greens and reds and oranges, whatever you want. Now this is dry, so let's take a risk. We're going to live on the edge and just start painting in between. Very carefully. It's nice and dark, and this really makes our picture pop out. So I'm going in nice and close. Do not let it dry. As you go, be aware of how far you're going with your paint. I don't want to have dried spots that show my brush strokes. I just want it to be nice and smooth and consistent. This. So I got a nice tip right there. If you got a big smear, that's okay. We can recover with a little bit of tissue. Just go like that. Doesn't erase it completely, but you can turn back time to some degree. Now, don't go back over wet paint to try to make it darker, to try to make it better. Leave it alone. Fix it later on, or just leave it, because once you let this dry, it has a completely different look. I'm going to try this little spot right here because it's nice and small. Just make a little triangle wedge. And this is time consuming. It can also be frustrating. Let's get some brown, get some black, more water to it. I can see when I drew this, I probably should have added a few more rocks in here because this is a very long interconnected web of rockery. So that's a bad idea. No problem. Let's put another rock in here. Right there. That'll break it up. And maybe another small one right here. So now instead of a monster long area to paint, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 reasonable areas. You can get around with that. I'll be back in a minute. And we're back. I'm carrying on with painting around. And you can see that I did the background without painting these rocks yet. That's fine. You can do it in either order. You could have painted the entire background web around the rocks and then go in and paint the rocks. That's fine. There are no rules about this. So I'm just going in. Now this brush isn't great for getting in these little corners, but I'm just not going to worry about it too much because I've got school starting like the rest of you do, and there are bigger fish to fry. So we can get right in there, or we can leave it. You could also create a complete wash before you do any work at all. You could make a nice brownish tan sandy wash on the whole background of the paper, then draw your rocks, then paint them different colors. The possibilities go on and on. So definitely try different things. And if you have questions, ask me. So going around, I should have some background music playing. And I kind of am doing a great big area again, which I said wasn't a good idea. So we're just going to put a pebble here. And we want to keep the paint wet, so while I'm doing this, I am hyper aware that this is drying rapidly. Sneak it right in, leave it. You can use a smaller brush for these little crevices as well. But whenever I've gone to a painting class with Willy Wong, he just has us use these number 8s, so I kind of don't even think to use a smaller brush. But they come in all sizes, so feel free to use what you're comfortable with. All right, that's good. Now maybe right in here. And so on and so forth. So based on me with this little pebble and these ones, I would definitely, before you tackle the background, plan it out before you start. So you don't run into a problem where you might panic, get a dry spot, and then your work doesn't look as smooth as it could. I haven't added any more paint to my palette lid. Just left it the way it is. Go around. And carry on. So I'll let you work on that for a few minutes, and there are only a couple more things I want to show you that you could do with this picture.